It doesn't happen in the moment she walks away. It happens much earlier when nothing looks broken yet. Before we go any further, if you value understanding patterns instead of guessing outcomes, make sure you're subscribed and stay with the channel. Respect rarely collapses with noise. It erodes in silence, in small, almost invisible shifts that don't register as danger until the bond is already hollow. Most men assume respect disappears because of arguments, betrayal, or obvious neglect. But those are endings, not beginnings. The beginning is quieter. It looks like normal life, feels like stability, and that's why it's missed. Respect is not an emotion. It's a perception. It lives in how the nervous system reads structure, direction, and polarity. Long before love fades, long before attraction wobbles, respect recalibrates based on signals the body notices before the mind does. First, everything seems aligned. He shows up. He listens. He adjusts. He prioritizes harmony. He wants the relationship to feel safe, predictable, smooth. And on the surface, it works. Conflict lowers. Tension disappears. Life becomes manageable. But something else disappears with it. Respect requires shape. It needs a sense of orientation. Where are we going? Who is anchored? What doesn't move under pressure? The nervous system tracks these questions constantly without language. When the answers become unclear, respect starts to thin. This isn't about dominance or control. It's about coherence. A person who maintains internal coherence under stress signals stability. A person who reshapes themselves to avoid discomfort signals fragility. The body notices the difference even when the mind calls both behaviors care. There's a moment most men overlook. It's not dramatic. It doesn't come with threats or ultimatums. It comes when he compromises something small that mattered to him, not out of generosity, but out of fear of tension. He doesn't say it out loud. He tells himself it's not worth it, that the relationship matters more. And that's when respect begins to change. Not because compromise is bad, but because repeated self-erasure rewires how he is perceived. Respect grows when someone can hold their ground calmly, not when they disappear to keep the peace. Peace without structure feels unstable to the nervous system. It feels temporary. Here's the contradiction people avoid. What looks like emotional availability can quietly register as loss of center. And loss of center doesn't inspire trust. It creates uncertainty of a different kind. Pause here for a moment. This isn't about blaming men for being kind or women for responding. It's about understanding how perception forms beneath intention. Respect is not a reward for effort. It's a response to presence. Presence doesn't mean being there physically or emotionally all the time. It means being anchored, having a spine that doesn't bend with every emotional current. When a man's mood, opinions, and decisions become overly dependent on maintaining approval, the relationship may feel calm, but respect begins to loosen its grip. Consider a man named Aaron. He's thoughtful, responsive, deeply invested. Early on, his decisiveness is part of what attracts her. He has opinions, boundaries, a sense of direction. Over time, he starts deferring more. He checks in constantly. He avoids disagreement. He explains himself too much. Nothing explodes, but something shifts. She stops asking his opinion the same way. She stops leaning into his decisions. Not consciously. It just happens. The dynamic softens, and softness without polarity becomes weightless. What's happening isn't rejection. It's recalibration. Respect responds to how someone handles pressure. When pressure is removed entirely, there's nothing to respond to. The nervous system doesn't read constant accommodation as safety. It reads it as instability masked as calm. Here's where timing matters. She doesn't leave when respect erodes. She stays, often longer than expected, because attachment can exist without respect. Comfort can exist without attraction. Familiarity can exist without desire. So from the outside, everything looks intact. Inside, respect is already gone. Another pause here. This loss is not malicious. It's not a decision. It's an adaptation. The nervous system updates its model of the relationship based on repeated signals. Signals like avoidance of conflict, loss of independent momentum, over-explaining, and emotional overfunctioning. Overfunctioning is subtle. It looks like care. It sounds like effort, but it communicates imbalance. When one person consistently manages the emotional temperature, the other stops trusting the structure to hold without constant intervention. Respect needs to know the structure can stand on its own. There's another layer that complicates this. Time. Early in relationships, effort is exciting. Later, effort without direction feels heavy. What once read as investment starts to read as need. Not because the behavior changed drastically, but because the context did. This is why respect often fades during periods of stability. When there are no external challenges, internal dynamics become more visible. Patterns that were masked by novelty come into focus. She starts noticing how decisions are made. Who adjusts more? Who absorbs discomfort? Who loses shape when things get tense? And the nervous system makes a quiet assessment. This doesn't mean she wants conflict. It means respect requires a sense of groundedness. A feeling that someone can tolerate disagreement without dissolving. Here's another uncomfortable truth. Men often try to restore respect by giving more. More reassurance. More presence. More accommodation. But respect doesn't respond to volume. It responds to alignment. When effort increases without restoring polarity, it accelerates the loss. Because it confirms the nervous system's conclusion that balance is gone. There's a moment in many relationships when she stops reacting strongly to his opinions. Not because she's more mature. Because they no longer register as firm. They feel negotiable. Temporary. Adjustable. Respect fades when everything feels adjustable. This is where people get confused. They assume respect is lost because of something big. Cheating. Failure. A dramatic mistake. But most of the time, it's lost through 1,000 small moments of self-abandonment that never looked like a problem. Here's the expectation-breaking part. Respect doesn't disappear because a man becomes less loving. It disappears when he becomes less himself. That line makes people uncomfortable because it reframes the issue. Love can coexist with loss of respect. Care can exist without attraction. Stability can exist without polarity. Polarity is the missing ingredient people avoid naming. Polarity isn't dominance. It's differentiation. Two distinct centers interacting. When one center collapses into the other, the dynamic flattens. And flat dynamics don't hold respect. Now consider two anonymous situations. In one, a man consistently reshapes his schedule, opinions, and boundaries to match his partner's emotional state. The relationship is calm, predictable, low conflict. In the other, a man listens, adjusts when it makes sense, but remains steady in his direction. He doesn't escalate. He doesn't withdraw. He doesn't over-explain. Which one signals stability? The nervous system answers that question instantly. Respect doesn't grow from obedience. It grows from grounded flexibility. From knowing someone can bend without breaking, adjust without erasing. This is why respect is often gone before the breakup conversation ever happens. By the time she speaks, the internal decision has already been made. Not consciously, but somatically. She may not even know how to explain it. She says things like, "I don't feel the same," or "something changed," or "I need space." These are not evasions. They're translations of a shift that happened without words. Men often respond by trying to reason their way back, to prove value, to demonstrate effort. But respect doesn't respond to persuasion. It responds to presence. Presence is not about being there more. It's about being there as yourself. Another pause. This is where many men misinterpret silence as safety. They think, if she hasn't complained, everything is fine. But silence often means adaptation has already occurred. The nervous system has stopped signaling because it's already moved on internally. When respect is intact, discomfort is expressed. When respect is gone, energy is conserved. This is why the breakup feels sudden to men. It wasn't sudden. It was silent. And here's the hardest part. Once respect is gone, it's difficult to rebuild inside the same dynamic. Not impossible, but rare. Because the nervous system resists reorientation without a real shift in structure. Promises don't shift structure. Explanations don't either. Only consistent, embodied change does. And even then, timing matters. The reason respect fades long before she leaves is because leaving is an outcome, not a cause. The cause is a slow loss of polarity, direction, and selfhood inside the relationship. This doesn't mean men should become rigid or unkind. It means they should remain whole. Wholeness is attractive because it's reliable. Reliable because it doesn't require constant management. Respect is not about control. It's about trust in someone's internal compass. When that compass disappears, the relationship may continue, but the dynamic has already shifted. By the time words catch up, the body has moved on. The final realization is this. She doesn't leave when respect is lost. She leaves when staying no longer feels aligned with who she is becoming. Respect is simply the first signal that alignment has broken. When you understand that, you stop chasing explanations and start paying attention to structure. You notice where you bend too much, where you disappear to keep peace, where you trade selfhood for harmony. Because harmony without selfhood is temporary. And respect cannot survive where selfhood has been quietly surrendered. See the pattern. Protect your energy. This is depth realm.